thing, but it's just an amazing conversation. So I hope you guys enjoy the conversation as well. Dean, how you doing today, brother?
I'm great, and it's really nice to meet you and to be a part of Memories of Us. I thank you for the invitation.
I appreciate you being a part of it.
Yeah.
So tell the audience a little bit about your journey, about how you got here. I know we talked a little bit before, and
Yeah.
I was enjoying it. I was like, wow, we got to get
Yeah,
this.
we got to hit the record button.
We got to hit this.
Well, I'm going to be turning 60 years old pretty soon. And my journey has been, I'm not where I expected I'd be. And it's not because I've had a terrible life necessarily. Had an interesting relationship with mom. But other than that, I've been pretty fortunate. Grew up in a military family, moved all over the place. My father was sort of a nomadic kind of guy, and we transferred around a lot more than my friends did. I loved, I hated moving at the time, but now when I look back on the first 18 years of my life, moving like 18 times,
Yeah.
even with staying some places for a few years, I realized that I got an experience that a lot of people, haven't had the benefit. When you're flying over a big city, like let's say New York City or Chicago, and you look down as you're coming in for landing and you see all those blocks of houses, whether it's in a rural area, whether it's an urban area or whatever, you realize that there are a lot of people down there that have never gotten outside those blocks or those neighborhoods.
Right.
And that's their whole globe, their whole world. They only know their people and their experience. And even if you're like today, it's easier because you got media and things like that, social media, and a lot more television channels.
Right. Yes.
You can experience some of it, but also, you can't do it unless you actually get dirty and you get in there and you shake somebody's hand and you're there to see and smell and feel everything that's really going on around you. And I got to do that up through, when I was through 18 years old. And we lived all over the country. I was born in Germany, and my last place that I lived that was most exciting was I went to high school in Italy, and then my last half of my senior year, I went and moved to Nebraska of all places, and that's where I ended up because my father's last station was there.
Okay.
And he retired and he moved with my little brother and my mom to Chicago. And basically I went to school in Nebraska, and that's where I stayed for, until 25 years ago. And I met my wife there. All my kids were born there. We moved to Iowa for a job 25 years ago. And here I am now at 60 years old with what's coming to be the close to my corporate career. This company that I'm with is in the end of life business. We actually are an insurance company that provides funding for prearranged funerals, and we work with funeral homes all across the country. And when somebody wants to plan ahead and pay for it, we have products and services that allow people to do that. And we don't need to go into that, but it is a good thing to do, is to plan ahead. And everybody does it at different life stages and stuff. But the main thing is how I got into the business, which is very interesting. Growing up, I wanted to be a doctor. That's number one. And number two, I wanted to have a hometown. Never had a hometown. I wanted to be part of a community. And at the time I felt I wanted to stay. I did not know that I would always feel nomadic, but I always wanted a hometown. And there was a show back in the 80s called Northern Exposure, for those people who are about my age, where a guy goes to med school, right? And this town in Alaska pays for him to go to med school. And what he had to do is he had to go back to that town and work off the med school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always wanted to be in a town where I was the town doc, and I birthed the babies and took care of the old people and took care of the families, as they were going through, the cycle of life. And when I got to college, I realized after talking to my advisor that I probably, even though the body made sense to me and I worked with ambulances and I was always the first aid guy and all that there was a lot more to being a doctor and a lot more school than I could probably handle.
Right.
And a friend of mine got me into broadcasting, and I had always DJ'd at parties, and he got me into DJing at weddings. And pretty soon I was having a pretty successful radio career, and I was on the air for probably 10 years, and I started producing commercials. And when I realized this, moving around like I did, we talked about this earlier where, you have to be very observant and find ways to fit in. And, they talk about immigration and assimilation and people losing their culture. And that's the sad part about the assimilation word, right?
Right.
And I learned that, wherever I was in the world or the country, I absorbed that culture. And it's not like when we lived in Texas that I talked like a Texan, right? But I still understood what it was to be part of that community. And if I wanted to have friends, or if I wanted anybody to relate to me, I had to reciprocate. And so in a way, you have to assimilate.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean giving up your own culture, values, beliefs, or personality, but it does mean that you need to find a way to fit in. Okay.
Right.
And it's very difficult these days with everybody being polarized on everything, and nobody wanting to understand a person's experience before they start pooping on them.
Oh yeah.
But, and that's something I feel very blessed from having to move around, is because that's my natural predisposition, is to figure out why somebody's acting the way they are, why they believe what they believe, or why they say what they say. And it usually comes down to the fact that their personal experience is something that I can never fully understand, but I can understand that they had a personal experience that's
Right.
affecting them
Yes.
this way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I can be empathetic or sympathetic, but maybe not empathetic, because I'm not part of the culture. I wasn't born there. I didn't have years of experience there. I didn't eat the dirt, or come from the dirt, or whatever. And so I think people need to realize that. And moving around my whole life, that kind of helped me out. Um, After I was in radio for a while, a friend of mine from college called me up, and he said, "Hey, I'm thinking of coming to town and starting an ad agency. And I've listened to a lot of commercials you've done and things like that. And how would you like to get together and do this?" And by then I had a real knack for writing ads. And I was always, when I didn't have friends, when I first moved into a place, I would always make up stories in my head about things I observed. And so I'm a
Mhm.
natural storyteller, which helped me become a pretty decent copywriter.
Right.
And so I could tell the stories for people and help them with their brands. In about 1991, our little agency got called by some people at a funeral home, one of the managers there. And he said, "Hey, we heard you guys do a lot of good work, and we need help. We need to be able to tell our story a little better than a lot of funeral homes are. It's a icky business. Nobody wants to think about death or dying. And every time they come here, they're sad because somebody died, that they love or that they know. So what can we do to do that?" And so after a while, we started working with them, and we started really, they became the #1 recommended funeral home in the area, only because we were very open and transparent. And we told people that there's a lot more that they do than just the bad part about helping people through a
Right.
death
Right.
experience. Right. And so within about a year and a half, I felt like, wow, this has everything I think I ever wanted. I mean, there was a little bit of medical with the embalming and the restorative arts.
Mhm.
There was definitely the healing part and the caring part. And there's definitely the community and the caring for the community part. And so I told the owner of the funeral home about a year and a half into our relationship, I think I want to be a funeral director. And thank God for people who can kind of see things that you can't, because he said, ordinarily I would jump at the chance, because there's not a lot of good quality people that we can attract to this business. He said, but funeral directors need what you've done for us. And if you'll continue to do what you do, I can keep you close to the business. I'll recommend you to all my friends, and you can build a business helping other funeral homes. And I'm like, okay. And so by the end of another year, we were working with 200 or 300 funeral homes and helping them tell their stories and helping them demystify what funeral directors do. And they're not these tall, sullen, hand clasped guys that, want to take advantage of you when you're at a very vulnerable time.
Right.
And then 25 years ago or 27 years ago, I met the people who I work for now at a convention. And basically they said, how would you like to work with 3,000 funeral homes instead of 300 funeral homes or 200 funeral homes? And, I'm mission oriented. So I'm like, you know what? Let's do this. And plus, I don't have to worry about a paycheck.
This is
when you
very true. That's
or
awesome.
or 11 other people's paychecks, right?
That is
And so
awesome.
that's what I've been doing for the last 25 years. The company that I work for has given me a platform and the ability to work with people in end of life care to help them better serve consumers. And a couple of years ago, I was working with our CEO, and I said, we're not reaching enough people because we're depending on funeral homes to do the marketing and the public relations, and they don't have a lot of resources. A lot of them are small family-owned businesses. And even if they are bigger businesses or they're a corporate business, meaning that they're owned by a large funeral home corporation,
Mhm.
they're not going to spend money on marketing and stuff. The profit margins aren't there for them to do what is required to affect millions and millions of people and get them to think in more healthy ways about talking about memories and end of life and things like that. And so we started the Love Always Project. And basically, it is we are not a lead generation company. We are here to help rise the tide for any business that's in funeral service, or anybody like you who is in the grief and support business, to give a platform. And we're creating this movement to get people to talk about, in focused ways and in healthy ways, about end of life. And so that's what the Love Always Project's about. If you go to the website, lovealwaysproject.org, you'll see information. You can join a forum that's private where you can ask questions, or you can just read what other people are talking about in terms of their experience. You can, and we learn from each other. And we're on social media and stuff. And my goal is, if 80 to 85% of the content on the website or on social media comes from people, that's what we want. Because we want people to learn from each other, not from so-called grief experts, which are great, but because everybody's experience is different, you'll take what you want out of other people who have similar experiences. We talked about this leading up to hitting the record button. So my mission, and then, you know, I think I'm probably going to be retiring from the company finally next year. I think I'll be able to work on the project afterwards, and still be able to not touch my what little I have saved up. And then we've also started a foundation. And the foundation, we just had our first board meeting. And what I want to do is, I want to give people who belong or who are part of our effort to, you know, achieve this goal of more healthy discussion about end of life. We want to give people more than just a good feeling that they're learning things or whatever. We want them to feel like they're part of something that has a purpose. And so we're trying to figure out what to do with monies that we will have endowed to us. And a lot of it comes from, like, if you have a project where you want to have a series of seminars that help men deal with grieving and relationships, you may say, hey, I want a grant. I need a grant. It's going to cost me X amount of dollars. And here's my grant. Here's what I hope to achieve. Can you help me out? And our board would look at it and hopefully write a check, you know? And so it's not just in our little bubble. We want to do good. And right now, I'll say this and then I'll wrap up. We can have a one-on-one conversation. Is there's a lot of talk about death and dying out there, you know? All these tragedies you're hearing in communities and school shootings and synagogues and police actions or inactions. You're hearing about prominent people dying, you know, whether they're music artists or whether they're like when Taylor Hawkins died from the Foo Fighters. I was devastated, man. I love their music. I've met them. And I was really messed up for a little while because it was just a surprise. This guy is full of life. Then you got Queen Elizabeth, you know, and Queen Elizabeth had been around for my grandparents' lifetime. So it's sort of an end of an era thing, you know? And, you know, Betty White, I mean, but, you know, it's just these people, especially influential people, you know, whether it's, knock on wood, Maya Angelou, you know, passes away, you know, years from now, but she's a major player in my life with her words, you know? And I think that, God forbid, the day something happens to her, and hopefully it's a long life and it's natural causes. But I think of it, this is what I'm saying. You can be prepared for these things and you can think about it, so you're more prepared. And when somebody does pass away, you can function to do the things you need to do, whether it's a relative or it's somebody you admire and have never met. But you can also make sense of it in your own mind and heart and say, okay, they're not alive. I'm not going to read new stuff from them or hear new music from them or hear a new speech from them or whatever it is. But what I can do is access everything that I remember they've ever done and make it part of the rest of my story. This is what I hope that people can start to realize and feel for themselves and make their own sense out of it through the Love Always Project. And that's why I'm talking to you, because you're interested in very similar things. And, you know, we're going to have some good time together talking about, you know, how people can overcome and live with these things that happen in our lives that can be very tragic, but also be very valuable to us.
And see, I heard a passion in your voice. And I want to, if you don't mind, I want to touch on how did that passion come about? Because we did talk about, some losses and
Yeah,
everything.
we did.
I don't want to spill anything, but you and I, we have some really
Yeah,
cool,
yeah. Well,
things.
the most recent one and the biggest impact on my life happened about 6 years ago when our son passed away. He was in the Marine Corps. He was one of these guys, you always hear the stories about, man, they always solved my problems and they were the funniest person in the room, and they always made me laugh. And what happened? Well, in his obituary that I wrote, I kind of said that there's people out there whose flame burns so hot and so hard, and everybody benefits from the heat and the light off of that. And you only have so much fuel, especially if you are dealing with issues on your own, and especially if you're not talking about those issues with
Right.
other people,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
And as
Because
men, we don't.
yeah, my son was in the Marines. He went to Afghanistan. Um, he always was the first guy to volunteer for stuff that was outside his MOS. And I heard these stories from people, or a lot of his best friends are now family friends of mine. And, the sons and daughters that, they extended family. But he got back, and like a lot of veterans, he just could not adjust, and he had a lot of demons. And so on after a great July 4th, we stayed away from fireworks. We watched some movies, which he knows the words to every, comedy movie ever written. And so that gets a little annoying. I had enough of it at about 2 a.m. He said, all right, I'm going to bed. Good night. And he said, love you, Dad. And how you talk about regrets and moments, split second moments in your life.
Right.
And I should have turned around, man, because he never said that to me ever. Not even in jest. He never, I mean, I know he loved me,
Right.
but unless it was a quote of a movie, he really never said that. But he said it, and I should have turned around and said, okay, because I feel like I might have seen something. I doubt it, but this is what we go through, right?
Right. Right.
And the next morning, got a call from his girlfriend really, really early. She said she was worried about him, and so I went downstairs. He was living with us at the time, and he was out the window. He was gone. And we searched for him for a while and finally found him. He was in his full dress combat uniform. He had a message in his pocket. He had pictures. He had his dog tags around his left hand. The method that he used to kill himself was a black powder rifle. And one thing we found out was that he was going to go buy a shotgun, and the system worked. For some reason, they caught something, and he couldn't buy the shotgun, but he could buy a black powder rifle because it's a one shot, it's not a regulated thing.
Right.
So his whole death was better planned than a lot of people plan their funerals and plan for their end of life, especially when you consider, if anybody knows about black powder rifles, you don't just, lock and load. It's a process to get it ready to shoot that one shot. And he went through that. Think about how mindful he had to be about the process.
Yes.
So, we knew that, that at that time it was very intentional for him to do that. And I got to say, I'm one of those people that can run towards a crisis. I was in crisis mode. I knew what to do and everything like that. We went and searched for him. And when we finally found him on a beautiful part of the river, close to where we live, he told us everything he wanted us to know about how he wanted to be treated at the end of his life. He had a high regard for his military service. My whole family obviously is military, except me. Unfortunately, it's a big regret I have. But so we knew that. We also knew that he wanted to be buried with Jewish tradition, because I'm Jewish, and he began to really get into Judaism in this last few years. He began talking to my youngest daughter about it, and she actually took it up and actually went to Israel and converted and everything. I mean, it's crazy. But so he had a lot of influence on her. But we knew all that, and so the one thing that I want to share out of this tragedy is, even though my wife and I had worked for over 20 years, 25 years in the funeral business. My wife works with funeral homes every day. The funeral director that we knew and that called and helped us out did not make any assumptions that we knew what the heck we were doing, because he knew from experience that the best people look like they have their stuff together, and they just don't. And there was one point in the planning process that that I knew I was messed up, and that is when it was something so obvious that I was going to get. I made 2 calls after we found him. One was to the funeral home, and the second one was to my Patriot Guard captain. And Patriot Guard riders are people who, motorcycle guys that do military escorts to and from funerals and things like that. So Adam and I both rode our motorcycles in the Patriot Guard in that last year of his life, and I had been doing it for probably 10 years by then. And anyway, so the other thing is that a lot of funeral homes have these Harley hearses. There are caissons that are towed behind a Harley motorcycle where the casket goes. Okay, you've seen them. And I must have talked to, I don't know how many funeral homes about that. They need to invest in this because it's a real tribute to military, law enforcement, firefighters, EMS, anybody who's been a public servant. And it's something that is of value to a certain segment of their population. So when we went through the planning, and the funeral director said, okay, and so we have a Harley hearse, you want that, right? That's when I had to stop, because I forgot. If he hadn't said that and asked me about it in the process, I would have forgotten it and would have kicked myself for the rest of my life worse than I am now. And so the other message is, even though I'm a professional working with funeral homes for all these years, you just never know what your brain is going to do.
Yes.
When there's a death that is significantly impactful to you. Right. And so that's the message for me, is that, when people say, how am I doing even all these years later? And, do you ever get over it or feel better about it? My answer is hell no. You never get over it. Right. You never get over it. You're never going to hear their voice again. They're never going to ride motorcycles with you again. They're never going to, you're never going to hear them quote George Carlin or Richard Pryor or anybody. You're not going to have them do that anymore. And so, I go downstairs and sit on the toilet that he sat on for 1.5 years while he lived here, and I'm sitting right where he sat. And too much information probably there, but you know what I'm saying? My point is that you do very physical things. You're in the I don't always sit down.
You know what?
I do have 2 daughters though, so they probably appreciate. Anyway,
they're gonna get you.
Yeah. Well, listen, this is how I deal, right? This is how I cope.
No, I totally get it. I totally get it. As men, I love having conversations like this. We talked about it earlier. As being men, we do have a tendency of detaching away from things.
Yeah.
And it's normal. When you first detach, you're like, oh, whatever, man, and I think there's a sense of, in that moment, just anger. You don't want to deal with it anymore. Numbness is right there. I think we talked about this a little bit.
And anger also repels people.
Yes.
So when they're mad, they stay away. Right. Yeah.
Well, and as men, we're good at pushing people away because, for one, we don't address these things. We don't talk about them, right? No one's ever taught us that it was okay to not be okay, and as we talked about before, the S word, survivor. We had to survive these things. It wasn't as if someone came in and gave us a blueprint and we had to, and we could navigate it. No, we had to survive those brutal nights, those lonely days, those empty conversations, that brain fog that comes in, the routines and everything that we develop to not deal.
Yeah. And it's hardwired into us. I know plenty of guys whose mothers were the main strong person in their house. Yes. The mother raised him. My mom was the strong person in the house. Trust me on that. And, and even though I had a female in my life who was the strength and the tough one and the leader and the manager and everything else, she's way more, quote, man than I'll ever be in terms of the way she dealt with stuff in her life and the way she handled herself with people. Back in the 70s, women weren't, and she was like, she definitely wore the pants wherever she was. She took charge. People respected her. And there are a lot of women like that. Yet, even though they're in our lives and influence us, we still have this hardwired thing that we have to be tougher, stronger, more survivor, protect, and everything else. And that robs us, in my opinion, of the ability. And look, I talk like I know what I'm doing and I'm practicing it myself now. I'm a very big hypocrite because I still don't know, you know.
We never know. We
No.
never know, right?
And
It's a
it's that
learning
hard wiring.
process.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a learning process, man. You know,
Yep.
I always tell the men as well. I was like, before you step out or step into this, we have to address something. Look at the people who told you that this is the way it's supposed to be. And like you said, most of the men I talk to, they're women. Of course, my mother, right? Just
Right.
like yourself. My mother raised me with an iron fist. She was a golden glove boxer, right? And she did not take nothing from nobody. My mom was
Right.
6'4", beautiful,
Yeah.
but she
Yeah.
had a mean streak a mile long,
Right.
and she didn't care. And when it came down to me, I was the oldest of me and my sister and my brother,
Yep.
and so the oldest one is the one that we experiment on, right?
Yep.
So by my mother being raised by the boomer generation, well,
Mhm.
the boomers, they was rough on them too, right? So I couldn't
That's
fault my
right.
mother as I got older, but I did understand that, we have to call it what it is. It's abuse, right?
Yeah.
You can't go around getting your butt whooped 5, 6, 7 times out of the day and think that that's normal.
With
But
anything that's available to them.
with any, yes, frying pans, belts,
I
hands,
to this day I can't stand when they get the dog leash out and my dog is all excited. I'm somewhere else. I'm in the closet.
it's like, no, flashbacks, no, can't do this
Right, right.
anymore.
No, I'm not going in. You could take her out.
Yeah,
I'm just
you go right ahead.
yeah.
It's funny, right?
Yep. Yep.
But we laugh about it now. But I also tell the men, and I tell anyone that I talk to, take your time. This is you don't have to rush the process, right? Go through it, and we're gonna walk together.
Yeah.
We will walk together because, for one, being someone who has walked that path and being a man, having to understand my version of the grieving process and then finding similarities with other men, which I actually figured out that what I was going through was our grieving process. The bad choices, the homelessness, the anger, the isolation, all of these different things, a combination, the addictions and things like that. They're all part of our grieving process.
Right.
And
There are
the, and
things to
the,
try and make us feel better, whether
right,
it's
right.
solitude, whether it's narcotics, nicotine, alcohol,
Mhm,
whatever it is, there are things we're trying to medicate ourselves with,
mhm.
and there's a lot of addictions, but you can be addicted to abusing lots of things, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So,
And I
uh,
didn't realize that neither, because I
yeah.
never, like when I quit drinking a little while ago because of my son when I had him.
Mhm.
And I knew when I had him, when he was a little kid, I had to go through some things through the courts and get somewhat partial custody of him because his mother was a narcissist, and
Mhm.
I couldn't do any right. So she dragged me through the mud for a little bit, and I was like, okay, whatever. You're the best teacher,
Yeah.
worst experience, best teacher in the world,
Yeah.
right? Because she stripped me down. I think that was the process. She stripped me down to the bare minimum, and I
Yeah.
literally had to rebuild myself into who I am now.
Yeah, you learned what not to do,
Well, I know
and
what I don't
what
want.
you didn't want.
I
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
I know what I don't want, but I'm still working on things. And it's been a journey. It's been a really beautiful process of reconnecting to the energy that my family left behind.
yeah,
So now I don't feel so lonely, even though I'm a loner. I've always been alone. And in a lot of ways, I've always been okay with that, right? Because I can
mhm,
detach from people, but also when I need to be in a moment with people, I don't have to bring those emotions with me. I can be
right,
an empty cup. Pour
yeah,
into me everything that you need to get off, because I'd rather make the sacrifice and carry that with me so you don't have to carry it with you. And having developed certain things to be able to release it into the universe and let everything work itself back out as it's coming
yeah,
back through the healing process, right?
yep,
And so I tell all these guys, I say, hey man, don't think that you're the only one going through it. What you're doing right there, been there, done that,
yeah. And one of the things we talked about a little earlier, just in preparation for today's talk, was that I think that another problem. I hate to keep going back to the ills of the world,
No,
but
no, no, go ahead.
one of the ills of the world is that we have the world is so big now. It used to just be my block. and then it was my town, and then it was my city, and then it was my region, and then it was my country, and now it's, we're global. And what's happened is that we have forgotten, there's too much for us to take in terms of trying to understand that other people have had their own unique
Yes.
one
Yes.
in 8 billion
Yes.
experience. The
Yes.
8 billionth baby was just born on Earth.
Yes, it was,
That
wasn't it?
that baby was born, and there were probably babies born within seconds of that baby who
Mm-hmm.
were, let's say, in China, right?
Mm-hmm.
And another baby was born, same color hair, the parents knew each other, everything else. They could have been with this most absolutely similar circumstances from the standpoint that they were born on the same day. They were 8 million and 8 million and one, right?
Right. Yeah.
The moment they came out of the womb, and the moment the first person touched them, their life experience began on a timetable and on an experience that is completely different than even if the same doctor touched them first,
Yes. Yeah.
because it's influenced by their environment and the first breath and everything. We forget that, why the help desk can't help you with your computer, because you don't know what the heck you did 2 seconds before it broke, and you can't tell them. And that's what they need to know before. Every time you hit a stroke on your computer, it changes the set of circumstances,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
That's what happens to people. Every input creates something in your brain and makes you do something, say something, smell something, feel something, hate something, love something. And we're all different. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter. And so that's why the grieving process is so different. That's why social media and other things are such a challenge, because people are taking things very much at safe value or at face value. Right.
Right.
And, forget the ills of the world and politics and stuff when it comes to death and dying and trying to deal with the most personal of things. As a person like you who wants to help others, I think one of the things you said to me was so important, is that you have all this experience to draw upon.
Mm-hmm.
And the men that you're talking to don't have to see that you've also done it and they're not alone, which some of them do.
Right.
But they just have to see that you're willing to listen to their perspective and have them tell you how they're feeling about something based on their life, because
Judgment.
we both lost a son, right?
Yes.
And completely different circumstances. You live in Colorado, I live in Iowa, whatever. Military, on my side, you had your set of circumstances. Are we grieving? Yes. Do we not have a son anymore? Yes. But you're a different person. You're dealing with it in a different way. I'm doing it with a different way. Maybe the one thing we have in common is that we're both equipped a certain way physically. And because of that, we have a genetic disposition to act a certain way or not feel a certain way, right? Men have similar characteristics, but we all have different experiences, right?
Right. Personalities.
Yeah.
Personalities, our characteristics as we deal with it,
Right.
We talked about this a little bit. We have to step outside of our way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because as men, we want to, let's go for it. If it's in front of me, I got to go for it, right?
Right.
So that's that survival mindset, and it's like everything has to be a battle.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to beat me. I hate using the word break, because I'm a human being, and we're all human beings. We're not things, right? You can break a thing, you can break a bone, and we can put a cast on it and heal it up. When it comes down to loss and feeling that pain, you have to call it what it is, and it's hurt. Mm-hmm. You cannot break a human being. You can hurt a human being to the point to where they feel as if their world has imploded on them, right? But it is what it is, still hurt. And I find that when you take broken out of it or break out of it and replace it with hurt, you tend to find avenues of searching that healing path.
Right.
And so as men, I'm like, hey, you have to really step outside of your way. And the reason why I say that is because you're going to do more damage to yourself by getting in your way than anybody else could ever do. Yeah.
I was watching I couldn't watch the whole thing. I'm going to watch it in segments, but Jonah Hill, the actor, has just released a documentary called Stutz, Stutz. it is about his therapist. He's been through millions of dollars and many years of therapy. Not unsurprisingly, a lot of people who are actors are doing, it's a healing thing, first of all, for acting, but
Right. Yeah.
it's tough because they have their own stuff to deal with, and then they're in these characters, right? And Jonah's a funny guy, but he's also an introvert, believe it or not. I'm an introvert.
I am
I'm
too.
big. I'm a big radio guy, man. But you know what? When I went to a remote and people came up to me, I was like, "Hi."
Anxiety.
Right, right. So anyway, but his therapist has Parkinson's disease, and Jonah Hill he found some value in this therapist. And again, I haven't seen the whole thing, but what I learned from just watching quickly was that the guy's process, first of all, he wanted people to be able to feel like that after one session with him, they felt like that they had something to do that can make themselves feel better.
Right.
Unlike a lot of other therapists who you go through years and it's a process and whatever. Most therapists don't want to tell you what to do. They want to ask you what you think you should do.
Right.
And this guy think that's BS, and he tells people what to do, based on the set of circumstances. One of the things he said is he drew this pyramid, and he said, for us to be able to really get, on with our lives, is we have to know what our, gosh, I forget what he called it. Anyway, he drew this pyramid, and at the bottom of it was your body. You have to know your body first. And as we all know, Jonah Hill has dealt with a lot of weight issues. And I have my whole life. I've been up and down. Every other year, I'm 100 pounds heavier. I'm 100 pounds lighter. It just depends on what's going on in my life. And so food is one of my things, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes
weights.
Yeah. And sometimes not food is the way, right?
Right.
So anyway, after you get your body dealt with and sorted out, we all know how we feel when we overeat or when we're overweight or when we're too skinny and we're hungry. It just messes with your mind to the point where you can't deal with the outside world. And those are people. So once you get your body set, the next middle part of that pyramid is people. How do you interact with other people? How do they interact with you? Once you are in a position where you can do that in a way where you're not hurting or struggling with yourself, your body, not your image of your body, but actually how you feel, then you can see when you're your best with people. And then at the top is yourself. And that is, how are you in the world? Not just with people, but what are you doing based on your friends and your interactions with people?
Yes.
I started thinking about that in terms of grieving and the grief process, right? A lot of us, after somebody dies, we don't want to eat. We don't want to see anybody. We want to stay in the dark. And all of a sudden, what happens? Our body goes to hell, right? You starve yourself of vitamin D, your melatonin's all messed up. You're not getting enough fluids, whatever, and you become unhealthy. Yes. Well, then it affects your ability to deal with people who might really be the key to you being able to live your life with a different relationship with that person who died in your life. Exactly. Like my son is still in my life. Yes. Just different way. His picture's behind me on the wall. I've got some cool memories of him. I've got stuff of his. There's still things in the house that I can smell him. We have some cologne and things like that. So they're still in the life. Anytime somebody tells me, or Veterans Day or Memorial Day or whatever, they're still there, never going away, right?
Exactly.
But you can't deal with it. You can't be with people unless you are feeling physically well. And then when it comes to then dealing with people, then after you're able to do that in grief, then all of a sudden you're able to work on yourself again. Then you're able to think about, okay, what are the things that I can do? And what you're doing after your journey of your life that you've had up till now, because you don't stop till you die, it's always a journey, it's always a process, is that what's manifested in you. I mean, I can only see you from, your torso up, but you look like you're in pretty good shape, and what I'm saying is you probably take good care of yourself. You probably have some friends you can rely on, and you have some people in your life that, you have people. The next thing is what am I going to do in the world now that I'm not needing to live in the dark or be angry? Well, your podcast is one of them. And the fact that you're willing to serve others is another. So when I was looking at that psychological thing about how a person survives, forget death and dying and everything else, just to think about your own mental health. But then when something tragic happens to you and you're in grief, you really have to go back to that whole thing. Take care of myself.
Yes.
Allow my people to help me and help them. And then become somebody who can, make money, contribute, do other things out in the world,
right.
And So it's very interesting that, and look, my three parts, body, people, and myself, are completely different than anybody else,
This is
because
true.
of my
Yeah.
experience. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps your audience or not, but
I
if you're
definitely help.
interested, I mean, I only got through the first, 45 minutes before I was at my house. My wife was working out of town, and I was like, I can't watch this right now because I need at least to hear footsteps in the house, because
Right.
it bums you out, kind of scares you a little bit. But it's a really good show because it's a whole different thing on mental health than I had ever seen before. And
Right.
this guy
Yes.
has some
Yeah.
pretty good visual models. And the minute I thought about how it affected me in my grieving process, I started thinking, wow, this is something good to talk about.
Right.
So, if your listeners are curious, it's a Netflix thing and it just came out. And so maybe that'll, help some folks out.
No, definitely. We always pushing good mental health, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, just to tie everything in together, when you're going through it, just to add to your pyramid, that mental health should be in there. What people need to understand about the people aspect, make sure there's going to be people that's going to be in your life, and there's going to be your tribe when you go through this. And what I mean by that, so you have the people in your life, like your family. They may not understand exactly what as a matter of fact, let's just be honest, they are not going to understand what you're going through.
Right.
As you said, as an individual. Now, going to your tribe is the people who have gone through it, other men or women, whichever groups that you're into, that really have walked that path. They don't understand it, but they get it.
Well, that's a great word. There is a book by Seth Godin, actually. He's a marketing guru, called Tribes.
Mm-hmm.
And that is another thing that is inherent in us genetically. I mean, you go
Yes.
back way back to, the first peoples in Africa, right? And they all, wherever, it was usually geographically, it wasn't so much
Mm-hmm.
how they looked, because everybody looked the same for millions of years. You've
Very
got
true.
different species of human beings. But what happened is that as they grew and went to different parts of the world and they had to survive in their own ways,
Right.
they became tribal, right? The first, the
Right.
tribes were small groups of just families, and then they became larger groups. And in the book Tribes, Seth Godin actually talks about what you just said, is that this is why brands are, from a marketing standpoint, are so important. I ride Harley Davidson motorcycles. No
Mm-hmm.
matter how hard I tried, no matter how many other brands I've tried, like I was on a BMW most of the summer. And guess what I did?
Went
After
back
he
to the Harley.
sold it, went right back to Harley. Why? Well, I went to the rally for BMW people, and I've been to a million Sturgis rallies up in South Dakota. And if you were to take everybody's clothes off, they'd be the same.
Mm-hmm.
65 years old, hair coming out of their ears and their nose, ponytails that are inappropriate. The women I won't go into. I'll only talk about the men. And the difference is that at Sturgis they wear leather, and in the BMW rally they wear Birkenstocks. But we're all motorcyclists, right? But what I'm saying is that it was for 22 years I've been riding Harleys, and that was the community I was used to. That was the sound I was used to, the smells. I mean, I was used to. It becomes tribal. And so you mentioned something that's inherently strong, okay? And I can never understand, like, I'm a Jewish guy, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you may have a best friend whose grandparents died in the Holocaust, and you've heard about it your whole life because you live next door to each other or you went to school together or whatever. But there's no way you can relate to what it's like, but you can certainly respond and understand in
Right.
ways that show, but you're not like him in that way or her.
Right.
And so people are attracted to people they like because there's inherent trust.
Yes.
And right now, unfortunately, people are using the wrong kind of cues to not trust others. And again, not to get too, I don't want to get political, but I mean, it's social media is really amplifying the differences in people too much, in my opinion. And I'm talking culture, color, background, whatever you want to say. And I think it's very important that we start to understand that deep down, we're hardwired for things, and we're not only hardwired for things, but then you've got on top of it all your different experiences that take your wiring and continually rejigger and plug and unplug and whatever, to where we're so individual that nobody could understand us, even if we share very visible traits. because
True.
I'm a New York Jew and they're a Florida Jew or a New Jersey Jew, or, you know, I can say that because I'm Jewish. I'm not going to use other cultures, but I'll use myself as an example, right? When
Yeah.
I go to North Carolina and I'm in a Jewish population and I hear a North Carolina accent, and the person is saying knish or something with a word in it, I'm like, that just doesn't sound right to me. My people are from you can't be Jewish. You sound like antebellum,
Yeah.
And but no, because their grandparents and my grandparents came from Poland and some of them died in the Holocaust. So, okay, we can understand. They're like me,
Right.
do they
Yeah.
raise their kids the same way? No. Are they grieving the same way? No. New York Jews, some of them will tend to do burials and grieving a lot different than somebody who was born in Georgia. They tend to go all out on funerals, right?
Right.
That's the tradition, even though they're Jewish. The one thing they will do, though, is they'll bury in 24 hours because that's what Jews do. And it's so I'm bringing this all up because I think it's very important, even as we just interact among ourselves in a lay fashion, that as close as you may feel to somebody, I would ask that people listening to this podcast think about their relationships and make sure that they're being the best they can be when their friends or relatives need them the most, because we're so predisposed to saying, yeah, no, I get it. I understand. No, you don't.
Yeah.
You can't. So you nod quietly and you ask, what can I do? How can I help? How does it make you feel? How can I help you feel better? Or would you rather just go out and have a drink and laugh?
Yeah.
Ask a lot of questions, because we always live under this golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That works if you're in the same tribe, sort of, right? Like we talked about.
Well,
But the fact of the matter is, it's the platinum rule that should apply: do unto others as they would have them done unto themselves. Now,
yeah,
how in the hell am I supposed to know what somebody wants done? Well, I got to ask them some questions. I got to
exactly.
listen really well.
Yes.
And that's really the way you celebrate life. You help people through grief. And not everybody can do that. You can be the best friend, but if somebody's really hurting, the best thing you can say, talk to Tony, because he does this every day and he's better at it than me because he does it every day, or
And I
whoever.
recommend people too.
Yeah.
Like the word expert is by no means. I'm a student. I have no, so I'm constantly learning, right? And I may be good in some areas, maybe not, right? But I know people, and I'm
Yeah.
not afraid to go, hey, maybe I'm not the right fit for you, but what I can do is I can connect you with someone. Now we tie all of this stuff in because we talk about the languages and being around the tribes and everything, but there's another important aspect that goes along with it. Now, the people that you're around, we can talk verbally, right? Now, the people that you're closest to actually talk to you in a different language, which is your love language.
Yeah.
So, as men, if you don't know your love language, you kind of veer towards other men who don't speak it verbally, but actually show it in different ways, right? And there's that connection right there. So what I mean by that tribe, these people all talk to each other, even when they're not talking, they're talking.
Right.
They're sharing something with each other, right? And it's
Absolutely.
something that builds that brotherhood and brings everything together. So it doesn't have to be in such a small bubble. It busts that bubble out, the friendships come, the respect for each other, the validation, the no judgment. We all did it. We're walking it, right? But it's so much that goes into it, tying in that pyramid. It's like, I love that pyramid because there's so many different layers to it, and you can just add to it, right? These different things that will actually help you extract what you need from it in order to take those steps. So
Well, I tell you, I definitely am going to keep in touch with you because I think we can help each other out personally and professionally. I have learned a lot from our previous conversation. I learned a lot, but even just here, I hope what I'm saying is helpful to the people that are listening to your podcast. And definitely, Tony, talking about this stuff helps me out. I hope it helps you out.
Oh man, it's beautiful for me, man. This is amazing. Well,
thank you.
If you had, where can people find you?
Well, first of all, you go to lovealwaysproject.org. And just check it out. I mean, you don't have to, we need an email address to be able to, stay in contact, and to the forum, because in case anybody else wants to post on the forum or comment, that's how we do it, is email address. You'll get emails from us, but it's not like if you go to e-commerce and you're getting pounded by stuff every week. It really is just for us to make sure you still know we're there every once in a while. We're not selling anything. Certainly, it's not a lead generation source, even though my company is underwriting it. I would not have taken on the project if it was going to be an overt lead generation process, because that would be not honest with the folks.
Right.
We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. Just type in the Love Always Project or Love Always Project, and you'll find us there. And really, you can contact me through the website. And if you're curious, I would just say, look, if anybody has an interest in helping others through their own stories, that's what really does help.
Right.
If you've got something to share it on our Facebook page or Instagram. Go to the website and type stuff in. If you like our content, share it and like it. And hopefully we're going to be expanding our services and our learning, mainly through the people that are participating, but also we have a lot of great experts that are guiding us and making sure we're not making some wrong steps and giving people bad advice or bad information. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Now, if you had any inspiring words to tell the audience out there, what would you tell them?
Well, one of my favorite movies, and my whole family's from Queens, from Flushing, so it's not the Bronx, even though my mom was born in the Bronx. But Bronx, A Bronx Tale is one of my favorite movies in the world. And Robert De Niro says to his son, Cologio is his name, says, "The saddest thing in life is wasted talent." And I can't help, whenever I hear of a person who has died, especially a young person, whether it's my son, your son, my favorite artist, my favorite poet, it's always untimely death when you have an attachment. But I would say that live your life with purpose, because the saddest thing in life is wasted talent. Every single person has something to offer. And you got to find a way to find it. And look, if you got to be homeless for a while or not have all the things you want for a while, trust me, I'm a voracious consumer, so that's hard for me to say. But you got to go through some things to not only find meaning, find your talent. Maybe I was going to be a doctor, I became a broadcaster, then a marketer, and now I'm all about, end of life. I'm talk about dying all day and, and death. So find that talent, and do what you think is right to make sure that talent gets out to the world and realized by others. And you're going to fall and you're going to fail. But Tony, you've gotten up. I mean, you've lived. I call you a survivor, because I think what your talent is and what you need to do in life. And does that mean you're never going to find yourself without a penny? And does that mean that you're never going to find yourself with a bloody knuckle? Maybe not. But I know, just from knowing you the short time I have, that those are all things that you learn from and that you're trying to make good from. So I applaud you for that. It's been a pleasure meeting you and talking to you. And I do want to keep in contact.
Oh yeah, you don't get rid of me that fast. We got other things going on. And so yeah, with that being said, I want to thank the audience. And for those who are passing through, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment, tell us what you think. Dean's links will be down below, so please reach out to him. And he got a lot of great things going on, especially for you guys who are looking at planning a funeral in the life. Right. Reach out to him. He's doing amazing things.
Thank you.
With that being said, you guys keep your head up. I love you. Until next time, love you.